All right, so today we're diving into Linguista Filipino. I get the feeling you're into this kind of thing, learning Tagalog, connecting with Filipino culture, am I right?
Sounds about right.
You've got a ton of their stuff, their websites, and blog posts, everything. And let me tell you, it's fascinating. And to help us unpack all of it, we've got our expert here.
Happy to be here.
So, are you ready to, learn some Tagalog? Or at least learn about learning Tagalog?
I'm always up for a language adventure. Let's do it.
Okay, so first things first. What exactly is Linguista Filipino?
Well, from what I've gathered, they're really trying to be the go-to for learning Tagalog, laser focused on teaching the language and connecting people to the culture, which I think is a really cool combination.
Yeah, and they're really specific about who they want to teach, too. It's not just anyone who wants to learn Tagalog. It's individuals of Filipino descent. And this is interesting. Non-Filipino spouses.
Yeah, it's like they found this niche. Which, in a world full of those generic language learning platforms, I think that's really smart. It's like you wouldn't go to a general physician for a heart problem, you'd go to a cardiologist, right?
Right.
So if you're really serious about learning Tagalog, and especially with a focus on Filipino culture, they're presenting themselves as the expert.
Yeah, they even say on their website, unlike other quality teaching sites, we pride ourselves on only Tagalog.
Wow.
That's commitment right there.
Yeah.
And it's not just about memorizing vocabulary or grammar. They really focus on why someone would want to learn Tagalog, the cultural connection, the family bonding aspect, personal growth.
I love that they focus on the why, because it gives you that deeper reason to learn. It's not just about checking a box. It's about connecting with something, I think, more meaningful.
Totally. And one line on their website that really stuck with me was, as little as an hour a week can connect you to your heritage. What do you think about that?
I think that's great. Not everybody has a ton of time to dedicate to something new, so it makes it feel accessible,
Right.
And, research shows that even short bursts of consistent language practice, they can be really effective, especially if you have engaging materials and a supportive learning environment, which it seems like Linguista Filipino is really emphasizing.
Yeah. So you don't have to dedicate your entire life to it to see some progress.
Exactly.
Okay. So we see they're all about this cultural connection, but what does that actually look like?
Well, it seems to me that they're not just talking about the surface level, being able to order food or ask for directions. It seems like they're talking about a much deeper appreciation for the traditions and values of Filipino culture.
Yeah, they actually have a whole section on their website dedicated to it.
Well, it makes sense, right? Because language is more than just words. It's really a window into a culture's way of thinking, their humor, their history, and they really seem to get that, based on how they talk about language as this tool for understanding a culture.
Totally. It's like by learning the language, you unlock this whole new way to connect with a culture on a much deeper level.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just about understanding the culture broadly. They also talk about how learning Tagalog can strengthen family ties.
Oh, yeah. Being able to connect with grandparents or older relatives who maybe primarily speak Tagalog.
Yeah.
Imagine being able to have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
In their language.
Yeah.
And hear their stories and really understand.
Yeah, I think that resonates with a lot of people, especially those who maybe grew up speaking a different language and they feel like they've lost touch with that part of themselves or with their family's history. So it can be a really powerful way to reconnect with your roots. And it's not just about the past either. They talk about how learning Tagalog can help you preserve that heritage for future generations.
Yeah, passing it on.
Exactly, which is, I think, especially important, for people of mixed heritage or for those who are living outside of the Philippines. It's a way to hold on to that part of yourself, even if you're, physically far away.
So it's this cultural connection, but also very personal with family and heritage.
Absolutely. And it's really cool how they bring those two things together.
Right. Speaking of these personal connections, they also talk about the impact of learning Tagalog, specifically on family dynamics. They actually call it family bonding on the website. What do you think about that whole idea?
Well, I think it's one thing to understand a culture on an intellectual level, reading about it, but it's a totally different thing to really live it and experience it through language, especially with your family.
Yeah. It's more than just understanding each other. It's like strengthening that bond.
Exactly. And they talk about how learning Tagalog together, like as a family, can actually improve communication overall because it kind of helps bridge those language gaps and allows for deeper conversations. And it's not even just about talking. It's about sharing those stories and traditions and creating experiences that bring families closer.
That's amazing. And there's like actual research on this, right?
Right. Studies have shown that shared activities, especially when they're rooted in like culture and language, can be incredibly powerful for making families closer.
That's so cool. So they're tapping into something very like primal and essential about being human, like this need to connect and belong.
Absolutely.
One thing I thought was interesting in this section was how they talked about the role of language in showing respect to elders. They mentioned there are certain ways of speaking, certain phrases in Tagalog that convey a deep sense of respect. And that's something that's like very central to Filipino culture, right?
That's fascinating. It's like you can't just directly translate from one language to another.
Right.
Because there are all these cultural nuances.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of? Have you heard of that concept, pakikisama?
Oh, yeah.
It's this idea of going along with the group, keeping the peace, and showing respect, especially to elders.
Right.
And it just seems like language plays a huge role in that.
Oh, absolutely. Language is like woven into every aspect of a culture, you know? So it's not just about conveying information. It's about navigating those dynamics.
Right.
And how you interact with others.
It makes you realize how much you might miss if you don't understand those nuances of a language.
Right. And that's what makes language learning so fun and rewarding. Because you're like peeling back the layers of a culture and you start to uncover these things that you would never know otherwise.
Oh, I love that.
It's exciting.
It is. And speaking of uncovering these things, they also talk about how learning Tagalog can help you express your own emotions in a more authentic way. What are your thoughts on that? I'm really curious to hear your take on this because that one really intrigued me.
That is fascinating, isn't it? Because, I mean, could it be that there are certain emotions or feelings that are really hard to say in English, but are more easily expressed in Tagalog?
Right. Like, is there something specific about the Tagalog language that allows for that? I mean, could you give me an example of an emotion that might be, like, better expressed in Tagalog than English?
You know, I don't want to bore you with linguistic theory or anything,
Yes.
but different languages, they offer these different lenses through which we experience and talk about the world, right? So Tagalog, with its history, its influences, probably has these unique ways of expressing emotions that just don't translate directly into English.
That's so cool. Like, there are emotions that we don't even have words for, potentially.
Maybe.
It makes me want to learn Tagalog just to understand.
It's like discovering a new color.
No, exactly.
And then you can use it in your painting.
I love that. So we've talked about cultural connection, family bonding, but Linguista Filipino also highlights those more, traditional benefits of language learning, like fluency.
Right. Right. And they really go into a lot of detail about how fast you can pick it up, especially if you have a native speaker to practice with.
Oh, yeah. That's like the cheat code right there.
Exactly.
Having access to native speakers can really make a difference in how quickly you learn.
Yeah. And they're not just talking about like casual conversations. They discuss actually achieving fluency in reading, writing, speaking.
Wow. That's a lot. So it's a very well-rounded approach.
It is. It's like you're developing this very comprehensive understanding of the language. And you know what I like? They actually give an estimate of how long it takes to reach different levels, which I think is helpful.
Yeah. Because people need realistic expectations.
Exactly.
But it also shows that progress is possible, even for someone who's just starting out.
Exactly. You can do it.
And it's interesting because they frame learning Tagalog as this journey of personal growth, too.
Yes. And this is where it goes beyond the language itself, and it's more about the cognitive and personal benefits of learning something new.
Right. It's challenging yourself.
Yeah.
Expanding your horizons. And they even list out the benefits on their website. Things like enhanced cognitive skills, greater cultural awareness, even like increased confidence.
Right. And this is real. There's actual research behind it.
Oh, wow.
Learning a new language, especially later in life, can have such a positive impact on your brain. Like, it can improve your memory, your problem-solving skills, even multitasking.
Really? I had no idea.
It's true. Think of your brain like a muscle. The more you challenge it, the stronger it gets.
Oh, I like that.
So learning a new language is a great workout for your brain.
So it's not just about learning Tagalog. It's about becoming a better version of yourself.
There you go.
That's amazing.
Invest in yourself.
Right. And they don't stop there. They also talk about how learning Tagalog can, broaden your cultural perspective, make you more open-minded, more appreciative of diversity.
Of course, because when you're learning a new language, you have to be open to new ways of thinking and seeing the world.
It's like stepping outside of your own little bubble.
Exactly. And I think that can be so enriching for people. It challenges your assumptions, You just see the world with new eyes.
It's about building bridges, not walls.
Exactly. And I think in today's world, we need more of that.
Right.
More connection, more understanding.
They also mentioned that learning Tagalog can help connect you to this wider community.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Filipino diaspora is huge.
It is.
It's all over the world.
So you're instantly connecting with people from all these different backgrounds, all these different places.
Yes, and who share this love for the language and the culture.
And there's also that sense of accomplishment that you get from learning a new language.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, it's not easy.
No.
It's challenging.
So when you actually achieve it, it's like, look what I did.
Exactly. If you can do this, you can do anything.
Exactly. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here about Linguista Filipino, but now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the bigger picture, if you're up for it.
Sure, yeah. Where are we going?
Well, this whole thing with Linguista Filipino, it got me thinking about the importance of language learning in general, especially in today's world.
Yeah, it's an important topic.
It is. And we could talk about it for hours, but for now, I want to focus on this one specific aspect, the idea of language as a way to preserve cultural heritage.
Yes, I love that.
Because it seems like Linguista Filipino is very passionate about that as well. They talk about how learning Tagalog can help preserve Filipino culture.
Right. And it's not just about Tagalog, This applies to every language, especially languages that are considered endangered or less common.
Exactly. And I think sometimes people forget that when a language dies, it's not just words that disappear. It's those stories, the traditions, the whole way of seeing the world that's lost.
It's like losing a piece of history.
Yeah, exactly. So language preservation is so important.
It is.
And language learning is a great way to contribute to that.
It's huge. Like every time somebody decides to learn a new language, they're helping keep that language alive.
It's like voting for diversity, but with language.
Exactly. It's saying, hey, this language matters,
I love that. So, how can we as individuals support this? Obviously, learning a new language is a great start, but are there other things we can do?
Oh, for sure. There are organizations dedicated to language revitalization.
Oh, cool.
You can volunteer to teach. You can even just talk about how important this is to other people. Every little thing helps.
Right. It's about spreading awareness.
Exactly. Because language is a gift. We should cherish it.
It really shows how interconnected we all are. It's a beautiful thought.
It is. And it goes back to that idea that Linguista Filipino keeps bringing up. This connection between language and identity.
Yes. They talk about it in the context of Filipino culture, but it makes you think, how does language shape your identity?
It's a question worth thinking about because for me, learning a new language is like discovering a new part of myself.
It's like unlocking a door to a whole new world.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Linguista Filipino, what would you say is the biggest takeaway for our listener? What's that one thing you hope they'll remember from today?
That's a tough one. There's so much. I think if I had to choose one, it's that language learning, it's about so much more than just learning words. It's a way to grow, to connect with people, and discover new cultures.
Well said. And I think we've definitely given our listeners a lot to think about today. Who knew that we could uncover so much from just one language learning company?
I know, right? It's amazing.
It really is. And we encourage you, the listener, to keep exploring the world of Tagalog and Filipino culture. You might be surprised by what you find. Until next time, happy learning. It's true, it's a real confidence booster, for sure. Okay, so we've talked about a lot, Linguista Filipino's approach, how they're so focused on Tagalog and cultural immersion, all those benefits for families, for personal growth. We even talk about cognitive enhancement. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
It is. They really get it. They've really thought about the reasons why someone would want to learn a new language. And for them, it's not just about, that checking a box.
Yeah.
It's about, really connecting with your heritage, making those family bonds stronger. And like you were saying, just expanding what you thought was possible.
Totally. And they're very upfront about this in their materials, too.
Yeah.
Like they say, their vision is a world where every individual of Filipino descent reconnects with their heritage through language. That's quite a vision.
It's powerful, right? It really shows you how much they believe in language as this like force for bringing people together. And I think it reminds us that language isn't just about communicating. It's about like who we are, who we connect with. It's about that shared human experience.
Absolutely. It really makes you think about how language shapes your own identity. I've always loved languages, but like going through all this stuff has made me realize how much language connects us to like who we are, how we see things.
That's what I love about learning a language. It's not just about, oh, I know this language now. It's like you're really going on this journey to like learn about yourself.
Oh, I love that. And speaking of like self-discovery, Linguista Filipino, they also touch upon this idea of learning Tagalog as a form of self-care.
Yeah, they have that whole section right on their website. It's about how language learning can help you grow as a person, which you don't see that very often, I have to say.
You don't. It's like they're saying that learning a new language is good for your brain, but also good for your like soul.
Totally. And they talk about how the process of learning a language, any language really, can boost your confidence, make you more empathetic. You just see the world differently.
It's challenging yourself in a way that's like fun and exciting, but also really rewarding.
And let's be honest, there's nothing quite like being able to talk to someone in another language, You just feel so connected.
You feel like you could do anything.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about why learning Tagalog can be so great. But what about the how? What do they actually do? How do they teach?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, it seems like they have a few things they really focus on based on their website. Certified teachers, for one.
Okay.
Personalized lessons. And they seem to be big on building a community.
Right.
They talk a lot about how important it is to learn from people who are, experienced, passionate about the language and the culture.
Yeah, so it's not just about like the technical parts of the language. It's about understanding everything else that goes with it, right?
Exactly.
What about those personalized lessons? What does that even mean?
So it looks like they really try to tailor their lessons to each student because they realize everyone learns differently.
Right, yeah. No two brains are alike.
Exactly. So they really spend time getting to know you, like how you learn best, what your goals are, and they use that to create a plan just for you.
Well, that's nice. So it doesn't feel so like cookie cutter.
No, not at all.
What about the community aspect? What do they do there?
Well, they seem to think it's really important to connect with other learners and with native speakers too.
Right. I mean, that makes sense.
Which is key if you really want to learn a language.
Because you get to practice.
Exactly. So they create this like really supportive space where you can practice and, connect with other people who are on the same journey.
They seem to really prioritize that sense of community.
They do. They understand that learning a new language, it can be tough.
It can be.
So having other people to support you makes a big difference.
It's like they're not just teaching a language, they're building this whole community around it.
Yeah, I like that.
So speaking of like, being successful, I'm curious, how do they define success? Is it fluency or is it something more?
That's a great question. And after reading everything, it seems like they define success as, yes, being able to speak the language, but more importantly, being able to connect with Filipino culture, like really connect on a deeper level.
So it's more holistic. You're not just learning words.
Yeah, they really believe that language is the key to opening up and like fully experiencing Filipino culture. It's about getting to the heart of it.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's not just acquisition, it's like immersion.
That's it. You said it better than I could.
So we've got the why, we've got the how, but what about the who? Who would benefit most from Linguista Filipino?
It seems like they're really focusing on, people of Filipino descent who maybe grew up outside the Philippines.
People who maybe feel disconnected.
Exactly. They want to give those people a way to find their way back.
And they're also focusing on non-Filipino spouses, which I thought was interesting.
Me too. I think it's great. It shows that they recognize that families come in all shapes and sizes.
Right.
And sometimes you need to find ways to bridge those cultural gaps.
Create those bonds.
Yeah, and I think it can make those relationships so much stronger.
They make learning Tagalog seem so fun and engaging and like you get so much out of it.
They do, and you can tell they really get how important it is to feel connected to your culture, to your family.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked a lot about Linguista Filipino, but now I want to get a little, philosophical if you're game.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Let's do it. I'm ready for it. What have you got?
Well, this whole thing got me thinking about language learning, but like on a much bigger scale.
Oh, I love that.
Like, what does it mean for the world?
Language in a global world, that's like a whole thing,
Totally. But today, I'm kind of stuck on this idea of language as this, like, tool to protect cultural heritage. Because that seems really important to Linguista Filipino as well.
It does, doesn't it? And it's not just them. It's like important for everyone.
Right. They talk about how learning Tagalog can help make sure Filipino culture sticks around,
Yeah.
For future generations.
Exactly. And it's not just about Tagalog. It's about every language, really, especially those that are, not as common. We need to make sure those survive.
Right. Because I think people forget when a language disappears, it's not just words that go away. It's like whole ways of life, stories, traditions, ways of thinking. It's a lot.
It really is. It's like a piece of history just vanishes.
Yeah. So preserving languages is more important than we think, maybe.
Way more important.
And learning a language, like actively learning it, is a really cool way to help with that,
Totally. Like every time someone learns a new language, they're helping that language survive, you know?
It's like you're making a difference just by learning.
It's like you're saying this matters.
I love that. I love that a lot. Okay, so how can we help as like regular people? Obviously, learning a language is great, but what else?
Oh, so much. There are organizations that their whole mission is to keep languages alive. You can volunteer, you can teach, or even just talk about this with people you know.
Just get the word out.
It all helps because remember, language is something to be treasured.
Absolutely. It's funny how this all started with like one company, one website, and now we're talking about the whole world.
I know, right? It just shows you how powerful language is.
It does. So I think if our listener takes away one thing today, it should be that language learning it's more than just a skill. It's a way to connect with the world, to learn about yourself, and to make sure these cultures that we love, that we're a part of, stay strong.
Beautifully said.
And on that note, I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today. Who knew there was so much to say about, like, one language learning website?
It's pretty amazing, right?
It is. But hey, that's what these deep dives are for. And to our listeners, we encourage you keep digging into the world of Tagalog Filipino culture. There's so much to discover. And who knows, maybe we'll do another deep dive on it someday. Until then, happy learning.